everyone, welcome to another What I Would Have Done Thursday. I'm going to be doing Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays video today because I'm not going to be having time on Friday and also Thursday and Saturday to do videos. So I'm going to be doing all of them today just to get them out of the way and so that you may enjoy them on time as opposed to having to wait days and being confused. I wish there was an easier way to communicate with my audience, but apparently, for whatever reason, from what I can tell, YouTube doesn't seem to allow the communication section really, or like an open communication section. At least as far as the way I've seen it formatted, but regardless, I'm going to try to keep it so that I kind of know my schedule ahead of time so that I can upload videos when I can. So without further ado, let me address the What I Would Have Done Thursday for this video, and that video is going to be, as you can see by the title and thumbnail, about The Happening. Yes, a Shyamalan movie. We're looking into a Shyamalan movie. And sort of what I think could have been done to ultimately improve this product that Mr. Shyamalan tried to bring to the screen. Now, I have mentioned beforehand how I believe a majority of Shyamalan's films are really not all that strong. There is obviously a few exceptions, especially within the beginning of his career, but unfortunately I think a lot of his really good ideas kind of fall by the wayside. And it's sad because I think ultimately he does have some interesting ideas. It's just I think the overall execution of those ideas ends up sort of getting lost. And it might have to do with some ego. It might have to do with, having too many ideas and not knowing what to do with them, or not clearly conveying things that, could have been conveyed in a more convincing way. Things like that I think are really what hinders Shyamalan's films from being of a higher standard. But I thought it would be interesting to look into this film in particular and sort of kind of discuss what I would have done with it had I been in some kind of authority power to make changes that would probably have allowed the film to be a little stronger. So right out of the gate, this film's main, like if you take all the other problems, yes, they are major problems, but this is probably the centerpiece of wrong that exists within this movie, and that is the plot. And it's kind of hard to discuss the plot because it's so silly. Basically, the plot is that there is this chemical that plants release that results in humans wanting to commit suicide. Already just saying that, I'm sorry, it just kind of makes me laugh a little because I'm just like, the evil plants, they're going to come and eat you, woo, or no, make you kill yourself, woo, Oh my, okay, yeah, and, already by the plot itself, you can just tell that this is not a subtle message whatsoever about environmentalism. The plants, they rise up and say, "We are nature! You will not ruin us, humans!" So yes, that is the plot. And that's already out of the gate a huge issue. Now, I'm not saying that, this has to be in any way, shape, or form scientifically accurate. It doesn't. You can play with science fiction, and create scenarios that probably wouldn't happen in real life, but you could still create an interesting story from it. It doesn't have to be real. That's not my issue. My issue is just how ridiculous it is. Um, the idea that, plants will, you know, use their abilities to destroy us because apparently we're destroying them somehow. I don't know, because we cut down trees, even though their trees still grow back, and that's where I feel like, the message doesn't suit itself well when you just do something so outright kind of ridiculous like this. What I think would have made this plot a little bit more subtle with its environmental message, and not made it so crazy of a concept, would have been something to the effect of, how about the chemicals that we pollute into the air? How about those are the ones that are killing us? And those chemicals are the ones that penetrate our brains and, make us want to, um, commit suicide. Why not that be the idea? Because, the message, it could be partially environmental, that, hey, we shouldn't, destroy, um, destroy, our planet because we end up destroying ourselves, or, or it could be something to the effect of, the things that are supposedly supposed to make us a more productive and vibrant species have the ability to cause harm to us. Those kinds of messages, it could have brought out a lot more, and, brought up interesting ideas instead of just, yeah, we're just going to have plants be, you know, um, we're just going to have plants take their revenge on humankind and that be the story. you know, um, and I think that also works better because it's not like there's something that's intentionally, bringing out these chemicals. It's just something that we did that we weren't aware of. It was something that went wrong. Um, and I think you could have gone through a variety of ways in doing this, but I think had this film revolved around scientists and maybe they were doing some kind of, government experiments and then it kind of went wrong, and then now this people are, committing suicide, and now they have to find out a solution to the problem, something like that would have suited this plot a whole lot better than just, yeah, let's have Mark Wahlberg and a bunch of people run around and try to figure out how to escape the evil plants that are omitting chemicals. I think that would have suited this story a whole lot better, um, than just it being, you know, a very overly emphasized environmental message. So I think those kinds of things that I suggested within the plot would sort of bring up a lot more interesting ideas than just, yeah, let's just have plants be the culprits. They needed to not use the word "the happening" all the time. That was a big problem. Because it happens so often, it's almost like the film is self-aware. Like, yeah, we know we're saying this all the time, but just in case you didn't know, something is happening in this movie. So yeah, they needed to not use the word "happening" all the time. And also with the plot suggestions I made, there's less predictability within I think such a scenario, and also which is something that existed within the film, And also, I think they didn't need to make certain scenarios to kind of indicate what was going to end up happening, which is kind of what Shyamalan sort of did. And yeah, that didn't really work out too well. And so I think that's also something that you could have done from a character as well as a plot perspective to you know think who's gonna live, who's gonna die, is there somebody gonna get uh, gonna be infected or with the chemicals or what, who's in the game, and who how are they, and you could make this whole thing of like how the chemicals are maybe spreading, and how it's like undetectable maybe even too, so that's another scary thing too, because you can't really tell, it's odorless, tasteless, you don't know until it's too late, basically. So that could have created, I think, a lot of suspense that the film kind of glosses over by just saying the wind pushes with the leaves, and then the chemicals go. Whoo. So I think that would have suited this plot better. Now, the second biggest problem that I think a lot of people had in particular with this film was the miscasting. Um, Mark Wahlberg as a teacher, it just doesn't sound right. um, and it's not to say that Mark Wahlberg couldn't, um, be some sort of mentor figure. It's just that he usually is not known for those kinds of roles, and within this film, it's very he just feels very misplaced. But I think that goes for everybody within this film. Even Zoe Deschanel is like, that's how she stares throughout this entire movie. So yeah, I think had they definitely chose different actors and actresses, this would have been a much stronger film. They also needed to develop a lot of the characters because there wasn't a whole lot of development going on throughout. And they could have kept similar scenarios, I think, um, as far as the character interactions are concerned. But they definitely needed, I think, the main characters in particular, I think, needed to be scientists, needed to be somehow involved with what initially becomes the disaster, and then they ultimately end up finding a solution, and you know um and then they end up saving the day, so to speak. It's and then I think it provides a good balance for science. It's not saying science is bad, and it's not saying that sometimes science gets a little bit carried away, and technology gets a little bit carried away. So again, yeah, it has sort of this environmental message, you could argue, too, with using chemicals and processes to be more productive, but in doing so we end up doing more harm than good, and how as we advance in certain areas, there might be discrepancies that end up occurring, and then we don't think about those, and then it's up up for us to fix them. And so again, those kinds of things, that are essentially a part of my suggested sort of plot for this movie, I think would have worked out a little bit better than, just having these characters that you just do not care about at all. Um, and also giving, there's a lot of not so very smart decisions made in this movie by the characters that definitely needed to change, especially considering the fact that my alternative route includes scientists as the main characters. Um, and yeah, I think though that's really ultimately all I can say as to what I would have done with this kind of a project. I mean, it is a little strange. It is a little out there. I mean, I don't think there has been anything that has suggested anything as close to having humans being capable of committing suicide. And I know that this kind of a scenario obviously would never happen in real life. But it's similar to the disaster movies, that that's not going to happen in real life. Scientists would probably laugh, but they'll laugh at all the other films that are so wildly not accurate as part of what science is. And I think if people really genuinely want to study science, they'll study science. Um, for filmmaking, it's about getting a message across. It's about conveying some kind of meaning or a lack of a meaning. It's not about trying to it's not trying to be purely based within fact. And I would have been okay with the idea of the scary thought of people suddenly having the need to hurt themselves and eventually kill themselves, really. So yeah, I think that could have worked out a lot better. And yeah, I think you could have also downplayed the violence too. I mean, this didn't need to be as violent as it was. Although I think, that some people may or may not disagree as far as to how violent this film should have been. But I think, you could have downplayed that maybe a little bit. But at the same time, I don't think it was so bad. But I think there are some scenes where I just feel like, oh, just why? This is so uncomfortable and yet so goofy at the same time. So yeah, that's really what I would have done with The Happening. I mean, it just needed some plot rearrangement, character rearrangement, and it just needed to, I think, ultimately convey the message in a lot more subtle and a lot more, in a lot more, and convey the message that, there could be multiple meanings out of the message. It doesn't have to be strongly environmental. So I think that would have worked better for this kind of a film. Uh, but yeah, I think that's really ultimately all I can say. I mean, it's goofy. I mean, it's kind of one of those it's so bad it's good Shyamalan films. It's probably a guilty pleasure of mine in that respects. Um, but at the same time, I can understand um, why there's a lot of people who don't particularly enjoy it either way. But at the same time, I still think it could have had some potential because I think, at the end of the day, I think there are some good ideas. They're just not executed properly in the same way that a lot of other Shyamalan films are. So yeah, I think that's though really ultimately all I can say for this video. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year. Hope to see you all in the next video. And if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But until next time, everybody,